As a member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, you participated in an April 2008 hearing at which you were one of the only voices in the room speaking in defense of abstinence education. You've been a longtime advocate for abstinence education, and in 2006 you had your staff conduct a report entitled Abstinence and Its Critics, which discredits many claims purveyed by those who oppose abstinence education. What did you think of this hearing?
Well, I personally feel I should have probably abstained from the hearing.
Okay.
It was arguably, although I've seen Chairman Waxman has done some pretty biased hearings,
yes.
but this was arguably the most biased hearing we've been. First off, from the topic, how has abstinence education failed? Rather than
so you knew you were going to be fighting
how
from the get-go.
How hard is it to get kids to abstain from sex, regardless what program you give them, would have been a fair title. The failures of both condom distribution and abstinence education to prevent teen pregnancy would have been an interesting title, because guess what? Nothing works very well. But their argument was based on a report that the Democrats did and asked for that said that certain abstinence programs hadn't been reaching the goals that we wanted. Now, the General Accounting Office, GAO, was very careful. They said some of these programs need to be improved, but they didn't make the claims that the Democrats' hearing subject or the chairman made or the media reprinted. Nothing in the GAO report said that abstinence education failed or was counterproductive. However, they did have a number of witnesses that suggested that abstinence education increased teen sexual activity, increased teen pregnancy, even though there wasn't any evidence of that. And probably the most amazing question came from Congresswoman Virginia Foxx from North Carolina. And she said, if the studies show that abstinence education reduces teen pregnancy, would you still favor or oppose abstinence education? And all but one of the Democratic witnesses, 6 of them, said they would oppose abstinence education even if data showed that it worked, which showed this wasn't a hearing about the effectiveness of abstinence education. It was objecting to teaching morality. One of the members of Congress who's said to them, isn't this futile? And that one of their big pitches of the day is we should teach abstinence plus. In other words, since the kids aren't going to abstain anyway, we should have abstinence plus, which would be somewhat like, I don't know, virginity plus. It's hard to sort through precisely what abstinence plus is, especially if you mention the word condom 8 times for every time you mention the word abstain. It's hard to argue that, which is what abstinence plus programs do.
Okay.
Then they argued, well, you shouldn't have been comparing words. Well, that was the whole point. You shouldn't have been word counting, but that's what you said, is that it was abstinence plus, but it's not abstinence with a little bit of, and if you don't, it's a, don't do it, but here's what to do, since you're not going to listen to me anyway. I asked one of the members of Congress, so do you favor a no smoking plus? In other words, smoking's bad, but since we know you're going to smoke anyway, here's the advantages of low tar cigarettes, here's medium tar cigarettes. If you smoke it a certain way, if you only smoke half the cigarette, and you spend 8 times as much money on giving him explanations of how you can have safe smoking, quotes. And you know what he said?
What did he say?
That's a good point. Yes, it's a good point. It happens to be at the core of the subject. I was particularly offended when 2 young people that were added to the supposed scientist panel. And
how young were these people, these witnesses, so to speak?
I thought initially they were 18 to 22, but I think they were more in their late 20s. And they said, one had AIDS, and he said, if it hadn't been for an abstinence program that didn't give him instruction on how to put the condom on correctly, he wouldn't have gotten AIDS. In other words, it's everybody's fault but his. And you know, one of the members said, are you saying in the abstinence program they didn't tell you that the only way not to get AIDS is not to have sex with a partner you don't know their background? And he didn't answer that. The other thing was, abstinence programs are only recently funded by the federal government. None of the kids who were objecting to the abstinence programs were objecting to an abstinence program that we were debating.
It was before
so the question is why did the chairman of the committee have kids on a scientist panel who didn't have any information about the programs we were debating, and then were so absurd that they blamed abstinence programs, which they didn't have any experience in, for their problems? I mean, this type, when people say, how is Washington different than Indiana? Here's an example. How is it different to have a conservative in control of Congress as opposed to a liberal? When I was chairman of the committee, of which Waxman was the chairman was part of my subcommittee, we did on abstinence programs and how to make them work better and how to make any kind of program
Not to
work
prove
better.
that they failed.
And his program
so to
is
speak.
how we can repeal abstinence programs.
What a difference. To view the report, please visit the Congressman's website at souder.house.gov.